Greetings. The next few weeks focuses on the practice of strategic human resource management, otherwise known as SHRM, and its role in the public sector. As the name implies, human resource management requires a comprehensive, well-thought-out approach to organizing employees to ensure that their efforts are maximized. This topic covers the various definitions and applications of SHRM, as well as how it can be used as an effective tool that maximizes mission delivery. Now, before we dive into SHRM, it's important to understand the basic building blocks of what is strategic planning in the first place. So as you can see here from this chart from the reading by Bill Hodge and Takuit, strategic planning involves understanding and deciding what the mission is going to be, and then doing an environmental assessment to look at how external conditions as well as internal conditions are going to be impacting or are going to be shaping the mission and vice versa. And then you get into setting up objectives. And those objectives have to be something that's challenging but attainable, measurable, time-specific, and documented. And then after you figure out the mission, how external and internal factors will impact that mission, and then create reasonable objectives based on that information, you want to set about doing a strategy. And so this is where you are being very specific about the kind of tasks and processes and practices and planning that you'll be doing. And then after developing the strategy, you will want to set about going to implement the strategy. So now that we have these basic building blocks in mind, we can think about how this works from an HR perspective. So as you can see here at the top of this graphic, you have strategic management. And then down here at the bottom, you have the HR strategy. Now, the takeaway here is not so much for you to understand every single other box in between, but it's for you to really identify and to see that a lot of analysis and a lot of data gathering and creating objectives and strategies goes in between actually having the concept for strategic management and then your HR strategy. And so your HR strategy is going to be informed by what you do from a strategic standpoint. And then from your strategic standpoint, you're going to be getting qualitative and quantitative information, setting goals, doing a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. And then you're going to be doing additional layers of analysis as well to finally come to an HR strategy. And that's just one approach. As you can see here at the bottom of the screen, it's just one approach to doing strategic HR. So now, what does SHRM actually mean? Well, there are several definitions, and I'll read them here. Faultler defined SHRM as a bundle of managerial activities aimed at developing as well as maintaining qualified employees that contribute to the strategic goals of the organization. Another definition is it's an approach to management which encompasses those HR strategies designed to improve organizational performance and measures the impact of these strategies on organizational performance. And then another example, SHRM is the choice, alignment, and integration of an organization's HRM system so that its human capital resources most effectively contribute to the strategic business objectives. So in short, what does all of this mean? SHRM is a comprehensive managerial approach that includes HR concerns as part of the broader organizational strategy. Organizational planning, culture, structuring, process creation, policies, and etc. don't occur without consideration of how they will be impacted by people and vice versa. Tangentially, SHRM involves knowing how human behavior, actions, perceptions, values, and etc. will indirectly and directly impact the aforementioned organizational dynamics and factors. Essentially, SHRM underscores the imperative that HR is everyone's business. So how does SHRM and research and application look together? So this map or this figure, it's mapping the research landscape of SHRM in nonprofit organizations by Baluch and Ritter. So this map basically outlines how SHRM research has been applied in the nonprofit sector and how we can use research to help us to understand strategic human resource planning in the nonprofit sector. So basically what this map is saying is that research has examined the external pressures that a nonprofit may face that basically contributes to tensions and managerial discretion. And then you also have how unique values, missions, and goals also contribute to tensions, managerial discretion, as well as a variety of responses. And then what this map is telling us is that research helps us to connect these elements into strategic orientation, the administrative dimension of NPOs, hybrid models of NPOs, as well as employee-oriented NPOs. And then that is mapped against human capital needs and social capital as well. And then what this map further tells us is that research in SHRM can help us to understand the subsequent processes and outcomes of a nonprofit organization. So now here is a takeaway from the Office of Personnel Management, which is basically the federal level, I call it the federal level HR department. And so what this piece of the website focuses on is strategic planning and alignment. And so I do encourage you to do more investigating and exploration of this particular website so that you can get a better feel for how OPM encourages people to use strategic planning and alignment to engage in HR planning. So let's just take a brief look at some of what this says. So according to OPM's website, strategic alignment is a process that senior leaders should implement and monitor throughout the planning lifecycle to link key operational systems and processes to the organization's mission and mission objectives. By providing top-level direction and guidance for the agency, senior leaders can communicate the organization's goals and strategic direction to operational leaders, such as supervisors and managers, and employees who then can identify and close gaps during the strategic workforce planning process. So the definition of strategic planning and alignment is a system that ensures agency human capital programs are aligned with agency mission, goals, and objectives through analysis, planning, investment, and measurement. And so OPM provides standards or guidelines for how to engage in strategic planning and alignment. And so let's take a look at them here. The standards for strategic planning and alignment systems require an agency to ensure an agency's human capital management strategies, plans, and practices. Number one, integrate strategic plans, annual performance plans and goals, and other relevant budget, finance, and acquisition plans. And two, that they contain measurable and observable performance targets. And three, communicate in an open and transparent manner to facilitate cross-agency collaboration to achieve mission objectives. So again, strategic human resource management is all about bringing in traditional strategic planning practices and dimensions into the realm of human capital planning and deployment. And so when we're looking at the evolving frameworks and practices of SHRM, we can be informed of those things by research, findings about SHRM, and then public sector practices, needs, and realities. So when we are thinking about, well, what kind of frameworks can we use for developing SHRM frameworks and practices, then we have to look at the research as well as the needs together. And so again, when you're asking yourself, what kind of framework should I use? Then one way to go about this is to actually identify current public sector needs and realities when it comes to the workforce, as well as what organizations actually need. But then also going back into research and asking how has research actually been applied to tell us more about SHRM and the impact that it has. So for example, what does SHRM tell us about employee engagement and retention? And then when we look at the current landscape right now with COVID, we see that there is a really significant need to understand in a much better and a much deeper way what employees need to be even more engaged in a current and a post-pandemic reality. And so combining those two things together can help you to create a framework that hopefully will evolve over time. So here's an example of strategic human resource planning in action
as it relates to COVID. And I really encourage you to take a full look at this. This is a link to the Workforce Strategies for a Post-COVID-19 Recovery Workbook by Deloitte & Touche. And this is the high-level overview of their framework. So they look at three particular areas and dynamics of workforce planning, which does indeed take a very strategic approach. And you can see that the planning here from a strategic approach focuses first on the work, and then the workforce, and then the workplace. And one of the things that I really like about this is that they ask these guiding questions, and that's really important when you're developing your strategic human resource planning measures and practices. So I really encourage you to think about what are the guiding questions that you have to meet the demands and to meet the needs not only of your organization and of your people, but how are those needs combined? So here you can see that the key question for this workbook is, are we returning to the way we worked before or adopting new ways of working? And then on the workforce area, the key strategic guiding question is, how does capacity, capability, and affordability affect workforce design after the crisis? And then the last piece of this in the guiding question here is, what did we learn about working in the flow of life? How did it impact work when the boundaries between work and life are blurred? And so again, I do encourage you to take a full look at it, but this gives you a little bit of a taste of how strategic human resource planning can be applied in a very practical way, especially given the context. So that is it for now. Here's what I would like for you to do over the next few weeks. So definitely, as you always know, go through the learning material again. And now is a really good time to maybe try a new productivity technique. And now is also a really great time to just do another self-assessment to see where you are in terms of needing to make adjustments with your work-life balance, mitigating burnout, and addressing depression or anxiety. And so this is a great time to go back to what you put into your perma-reflection and ask, how are you doing with the habits that you want to develop based on your perma-reflection? And then also reflect on how you've grown so far in the course and try to make some new goals for yourself to develop further by the end of the semester. And then, as I always said, review the learning material several times. And another way that you can grow and a goal that you can set for yourself is to challenge yourself with reading. So I always give challenge readings. And so if you haven't been doing the challenge readings, I do encourage you to try that. The best way to improve your reading and your writing is to read and to write. And then I really encourage you to try to get your discussion board posts in a little bit earlier. So as always, keep up with your self-care, community building, and productivity class or practices. And if you have questions, then let me know. I am happy to help.